Broadsword calling Danny boy, broadsword calling Danny boy. I can say that line pretty much anywhere in the English-speaking world, and some people will know what I'm referring to. The iconic 1968 war film Where Eagles Dare. Another iconic thing from that film is actor Clint Eastwood, standing in the corridor at Schloss Adler, the Castle of the Eagles, blasting SS with not one but two MP40 machine pistols, while Richard Burton makes his famous radio call to SOE headquarters. To say that I love this film would be a massive understatement. And a few years ago, I made a tongue-in-cheek video about my pilgrimage to film the real Castle of the Eagles, Schloss Hohenwerfen in Austria, where most of the MP40 action takes place. Those who know my written work will have guessed where I got the title of my best-selling 2017 book, Castle of the Eagles, from, which is, incidentally, currently being developed into a 6-part TV series to star Jason Isaacs in the leading role. So watch this space. Back to the 1968 film, MP40s figure very prominently on screen, being used by both Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton throughout, and also by many of the baddies as well. However, very few people know of a connection between Where Eagles Dare and the small English town of Bridgwater in Somerset, and a curious event in 2017. In Britain, various police forces often hold weapons amnesties to try and get illegally owned guns out of circulation, plus their associated ammunition, and people can, during an amnesty, hand in such illegal weapons without fear of prosecution. Britain has some of the world's toughest gun laws, but you can own shotguns and rifles on licenses issued by local police forces. As many of you know, I own weapons and shoot regularly. So guns are not illegal, as some ill-informed people think about the UK, just very well regulated. Pistols, however, are almost entirely banned, as well as automatic weapons. So considerable excitement was generated in Bridgwater when a man walked into the police station in 2017 and handed over a German MP40. When officers inquired a little into its provenance, the old man surprised everyone by saying he had worked in the film industry, and the MP40 had been used by Clint Eastwood in the film Where Eagles Dare. It created quite the stir, and the find was widely reported not just in the UK but all over the world. In total, the amnesty resulted in 220 illegal weapons being handed in, and Avon and Somerset police told reporters that most would be destroyed. However, particularly interesting or historically important weapons are always saved, and the MP40 was, apparently, to be donated to the Royal Armouries in Leeds. I recently came upon this story and thought it should be investigated in more detail, particularly as a flurry of copy-paste articles appeared in newspapers globally following the MP40's appearance. Had it really been used in Where Eagles Dare, and by the great Clint Eastwood himself? Very big claims indeed, and if true, this MP40 would be very valuable. In order to better understand how weapons were sourced and used in 1960s films, I managed to find out that the guns in Where Eagles Dare all came from one British company, Baptiste, which is still supplying weapons to film and TV in 2024. Digging deeper, I discovered that one of the armourers on Where Eagles Dare was a man named Jim Dowdall, who just so happens to probably be the most famous stuntman in the movie business, and his credits run quite the gamut of war films, from Battle of Britain, The Dirty Dozen, Where Eagles Dare, The Bridge at Remagen, The Eagle Has Landed, Saving Private Ryan, and Enemy at the Gates. Not to mention driving the tank in the chase scene in the Bond film GoldenEye. And he was also one of the heavies chasing Indiana Jones in the boat chase scene in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Jim was very surprised that I managed to find out that one of his early jobs was as an armourer on Where Eagles Dare. So for those interested in some of the background to the filming of Where Eagles Dare, this, I think, will interest you a lot, and Jim told me much concerning the MP40s. Where Eagles Dare was filmed on location in Austria in January 1968, and all the interior shots and some of the outside scenes were on sound stages and the backlot at MGM Studios in Boreham Wood in England in spring 1968. Jim told me that in the 1960s no mechanically good reproduction weapons were available for film work. Also, there were no deactivated weapons used. They only became available in the 1980s. Two types of MP40 were used on Where Eagles Dare. Cast aluminium dummy MP40s for background actors who were not in shooting scenes. And all other MP40s and the other German weapons used on the film were authentic World War II live weapons. All were converted to fire blanks by the simple expedient of tapping the end of the barrel and inserting a restrictor to artificially create a blowback to enable the weapon to recycle cartridges. If the restrictor was removed, the weapon could fire ball ammunition. At least 2 real MP40s were welded up for stock to be used to hire out to photographers and so on, who were shooting advertising stills and book jackets and so on. So during the filming at MGM Studios, Jim would collect 20 real MP40s from Baptiste at about 5:30 a.m. each morning, stuff them in the wheel well behind the seats under a blanket in his Austin Champ car, and be at MGM for 7 a.m. He would then return them in the evening. The German rifles and pistols used in the film, they stayed with the prop department overnight at the studios, as the studio had been issued with a temporary firearms certificate for the duration of filming, but limited to Section 1 firearms only. Anything fully automatic required an armourer to be present at all times, so these weapons were returned to Baptiste's secure storage every night. That included also the MG42 machine gun that was used in one scene. The famous scene, of course, with Clint Eastwood and his double MP40s. The MG42 machine gunner, by the way, was a very young Jim Dowdall. The welded-up MP40s would have been kept by the prop department at MGM, and Jim says that if one had gone missing, it would not have been considered a big deal, so long as the film company compensated Baptiste, as it was no longer considered a dangerous weapon. How times have changed. Baptiste could easily source replacement MP40s from the famous company Inter Arms at Bollow Lane, Acton. They had stocks of MP40s along with magazines and even loading tools. The press photos of the MP40 handed in to police in 2017 were a little problematic. Zooming in on the photos, I can see that the serial numbers usually found on real MP40s don't appear to be present in the right places, suggesting of course that it wasn't authentic. And as we know that mostly authentic MP40s were used in filming, any association with the famous Clint Eastwood scene does begin to look a bit shaky. Seeking a professional opinion, I contacted Dr. Jonathan Ferguson, keeper of firearms at the Royal Armouries at Leeds, which is where the MP40 was reported to have been sent. However, Jonathan confirmed that they had never received it. He also suggested, looking at the photos, that the gun resembled either a Japanese model gun, cap gun, or an inert Spanish Dinix replica. He noted that the buttstock had been visibly snapped off and concluded that this weapon was made in large part of die-cast zinc alloy, which a movie prop gun would never be. As Jonathan said, quote, "Drop it once, it's done." So what's left? Could it be one of those aluminium prop guns created for the film that Jim mentioned? Then I heard back from the firearms manager at Bridgwater police station. He said that the weapon was a Japanese replica dating from the late 1960s or early 1970s. It had some kind of mechanism to produce sound and muzzle flash, a working bolt, and could eject cases. It was heavy, though not as heavy as a real MP40. The police thought it could possibly have fitted the description of an aluminium prop MP40 that Jim mentioned. The police stated that all connection to Where Eagles Dare came from the person that handed the weapon in. Quote, "We used it as part of a good news story, as publicity for the wider amnesty taking place at the time. I think we were all taken by surprise at the news media reaction to it, and there was some considerable embellishment that did not originate with us." End quote. So, double-checking with Jim, he said, quote, "The cast aluminium dummies we had were literally just a solid casting painted black with a dummy sling. There never were any working parts at all," end quote. So what became of the mysterious MP40 that started all this nonsense? Well, the police said it was probably destroyed. It is amazing how one man's cheeky lie, spoken in a police station, could be spun out into a tale involving movie history and iconic stars that spread far beyond England, and embellished into one of the most interesting weapons finds of recent years. I hope that somewhere, someone is watching this video cradling Clint Eastwood's real MP40 in his lap and smiling broadly. Perhaps another video on this fabulous topic may yet be made. Anyway, I hope you found this little delve behind the scenes of Where Eagles Dare quite interesting. And do check out Jim Dowdall's website, link in the end screen. It makes for fascinating reading. Broadsword, over and out. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.